And so this was kind of that pivotal moment where I'm like, okay, God, I am recognizing that many of my coworkers are struggling with alcohol. Many are on their second and third marriages. They're jaded. Their sense of humor is gone. And I was like, I don't want to become that. I don't want to become this crispy fried social worker that retires on sick leave, with like many of my predecessors were. And so I was like, okay, God, I'm at the end of myself.
Have you ever sat in your car before work just before trying to get yourself to walk in? Or have you tossed and turned in your bed a few extra times, worrying about the day and what it will bring? You care about your work, but lately it's been taking out more than it gives back. And believe me, that's a hard place to be. Because when you're a helper, when you're in a helping role, when you really care and you get fulfilled by the work that you do, it's just easy to give and then give and give and give until one day you look up and you realize there's nothing left. You're running on empty. And in this episode, I talk with Laura Howe, and she spent 20 years in mental health on the front lines, and she hit a point that many people just try to push through and they don't talk about. She really describes in this episode what it feels like to be burnt out, to have compassion fatigue. That moment where you're thinking, I don't know if I can keep doing it. I don't know if I can keep doing this. But she didn't walk away from the work. She just found a different way to help. So in this episode, we talk about what burnout really is and why it's not a personal failure. It's probably the end result of the system more than the person. Then we talk about how your skills as a therapist or a helper can translate into something more than just one-on-one sessions. And we also talk about the shift from trying to help everyone to getting clear on who you are really called to serve, who brings you joy. She also shares how she started bridging the gap between mental health and the church in a way that actually cares for the people and also cares for the people doing the caring. So if you've been feeling like you're stretched thin or you're wondering how long you can keep going at this pace, this conversation is going to meet you right where you're at. You don't have to lose yourself to keep helping others. And if something in this conversation stirs part of you that's been sitting on the sidelines for a while, that part that still wants to build or to teach or to try something new, I put together something simple called the Unpause Playbook. It's a place to slow down, get clear, and take that one step forward without feeling like you have to figure everything out all at once. You can find that link in the show notes. And now onto the conversation about Hope Made Strong. Hello, and welcome back to the Scaling Therapist podcast. I'm your host, James Marland. This is the show where I help therapists and coaches turn their wisdom into income. Today, I'm here with Laura Howe. She's the owner of Hope Made Strong, and her webpage, hopemadestrong.org. And I met her at a conference, and we were talking about church care ministry and what she did and how she transitioned from her other career into helping churches care for the people in their community. And I'm like, well, this is somebody I got to have on the podcast. So, Laura, thanks so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. I'm pretty excited to be here. Love talking about this stuff.
So what did you go to school for, and how did you end up doing this type of work?
My story, where do we begin? Okay, well, my background is a clinical mental health social worker. So, and from Canada. So our licensure is a little bit different. So I would be similar to that as a therapist or a counselor having their own. Didn't have my own private practice. I could have, but instead I worked in a nonprofit community health organization as a counselor, clinician, did many jobs there because I was there for 20 years. Supporting those with serious mental illness, addictions, homelessness, and crisis and case management. And as well, As one of my favorite parts of my job is that I was supervising and developing programs for peer supporters, training, supervising, and bringing peer support into clinical settings.
Now peer support is different from America. The peer support network is a little different. For me, peer
Uh-huh.
support, we had a peer support division, I guess. Yeah, at the freestanding mental health psych hospital that I work for, but it was like separate from everything, and it was sort of like community based
Mhm.
peers, but it wasn't integrated as much as I think you were telling me it was, right? It's different. Peer support's different.
Perhaps it's different. I actually have not been there for 5 years, so maybe things have changed. But when I was doing that work, we were integrating peer support into clinical settings, almost professionalizing peer support,
Mm.
recognizing that people's lived experience is really an asset and a skill set for people. So creating job descriptions, accountabilities, training, and supervision. So peers can be in walk-in clinics, inpatient hospital units, outpatient community settings, drop-in clinics, all kinds of spaces where that lived experience story and the rapport and relationship really helps people along in their recovery journey.
So they're supporting the other people right in the like in the waiting room or
Waiting
eh,
room, appointments, doc office, inpatient
okay, yeah.
settings. They had appointments and clients themselves. Yeah, so they were a integral part of our multidisciplinary team at our mental health clinic.
Great.
Yeah.
So
So where did it go from
yeah,
there?
how did you get to where you are now? Like you have a
Yeah.
burden for people and
Yes.
you're also, you live and work and worship in a church. How
Yes.
did those two worlds
Oh.
kind of combine?
Well, first I have to say the cliche word of God intervened, or there was
Of
like an
course.
awakening moment there. But to break it down from my perspective as almost kind of a participant or observer in this transition, is I had a pretty acute experience with compassion fatigue and burnout where,
Mm,
and I think a lot of people who are in the helping profession can relate, where there are people whose it could feel, while it's not maybe accurate, but it feels like their lives depend on your support and service. But I would sit in the parking lot in my car dreading going into work. I started having nightmares.
mm,
I would be so overwhelmed. Had a lot of compassion fatigue symptoms with my family where my empathy was used up during the day and I had no more empathy and compassion for my kids and spouse. Not a good look, not a good moment for me. And so I took some time off of work. I went on sick leave, had very supportive supervisors, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, what the heck am I going to do off of work?" And my supervisor's like, "Nothing, Laura. Do
mm.
nothing." And I was like, "There's no way that could happen." But anyway, I ended up doing nothing because once you stop, your system is, "Whoa, whoa, 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 you need help." So old injuries flared up, infections, sickness, like anxiety, nightmares, flashback, like all kinds of stuff started happening when I stopped. And it really made me see how impactful caregiving work and clinical work is. And it's just not clinical work, anything in the caregiving role where you're surrounded by suffering. And so this was kind of that pivotal moment where I'm like, okay, God, I am recognizing that many of my coworkers are struggling with alcohol. Many are on their second and third marriages. They're jaded, their sense of humor is gone. And I was like, I don't want to become that. I don't want to become this crispy fried social worker that retires on sick leave with like many of my predecessors were. And unfortunately. And so I was like, "Okay, God, I'm at the end of myself." I started searching. I did my project management certification, and that was like, "Whoa, this is my people. This is how I think." I was a decent social worker, all right, counselor, but man, project management, that was my thing. So that's when I started shifting into more of that programmatic and team supervisor role. And it was those pieces plus my experience at church. So, what I was trying to manufacture or develop in the community happens organically. So, that peer support piece. We're trying to drum up business, find people with lived experience who want to share their story. We're trying to develop that in the community. But in church, it happens organically. And this aha moment happened when I was like, okay, if the church can learn from the community in ethics, documentation, confidentiality, skills, collaboration, and if the community can learn the church, where it's like community and belonging and hope and relationship and connectivity, man, our neighborhoods could be transformed. So this is where the bridge started to build between my experience as a clinician and the needs of the church.
Great. What a story. I think what you're describing, some of that burnout,
Mhm.
like you hear about some of that on the edges because people don't really want to talk about it. Like they don't want to be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm suffering. I'm struggling, I'm in the car, heavy breathing before I go in
Yep.
because I'm trying to work myself up. I wake up tired because
Yes.
I don't
No
like."
amount of sleep
Yeah.
provides you the rest you need when you're experiencing that. Yeah.
And I've read studies that 70% of therapists, caregivers will experience that in their lifetime, in their
Mhm.
career, and like 30 to 40% of them have done it in the last year or something. There's like studies
I
that are
yeah.
like it is high.
Yeah, and I think we need to destigmatize it as something that is a result of lack of self-care. Like, I don't wanna blame the caregiver for not taking care of themselves, and
Mhm.
therefore you get this, burnout. But compassion fatigue and burnout is a workplace hazard of caregiving. There's many professions out there that there's known workplace hazards. That's why we had steel toe boots. That's why we wear gloves and masks and vests and all of these. We wear harness for, roofers. Like there's so many different professions and fields that have safety measures in place to protect their workers. And when you're a caregiver, compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, burnout is the workplace hazard that is most impactful. And it's insidious. Like it sneaks up on you and you don't realize it. I've created a course called Finding Hope and Helping, all about how to recognize those signs, how to and it's primarily made for ministry leaders because ministry leaders are in caregiving roles as well, and don't maybe not have the language or the training to identify it. Yeah, so compassion fatigue, I 70% seems fairly accurate. I would be surprised if at some aspect we all have
Mhm.
signs and symptoms, whether they're debilitating or not, that's probably different. But we all are impacted and touched by compassion fatigue.
So you have these two worlds,
Yes.
you started seeing, like, what did you see was missing in the church that you were like, "Oh, I can help with this." Like, what was
Oh my
the
god,
issue?
so much. I think a lot of entrepreneurs come an entrepreneur because they're trying to solve a problem,
Mhm.
and they're trying to soothe the frustration that they're having. Oh my goodness. As I mentioned, project management was this field that I didn't really know existed, and I think I got into social work because I got to tell people what to do, although I never, like, gave advice, that's not ethical. But you were project managing essentially
Mhm.
individuals on their journey, and that's a terrible, gross way of saying it, but that's how my brain works. And so when I was in church, I just became really frustrated for a number of reasons. Churches had great intentions, but their execution often had an agenda attached to it. So they wanted to impact the families in the neighborhoods surrounding our church building. But it was a bait and switch, it felt sometimes, where you could come for this barbecue, but you have to listen to this sermon, or we wanna give out gift cards, but we're gonna give them after a presentation, or, you have to, I don't think, and everyone was very well-meaning, but having that clinical side, recognizing that transactional piece that happens, and it messes up trust and relationship and community. So that piece frustrated me. Also, it felt very chaotic and disorganized. Many other ministries in a church have a person in charge, have a budget line, have policy and procedure, have expectations, a schedule, a team. But care was kind of done flippantly off the side of everyone's desk. It was people reactive to care. "Oh my gosh, someone had an accident. Someone's had surgeries. There was a death in the family. A baby was born." And it was this panic or scramble, disorganization. One family member might receive this kind of care after a bereavement, where another family who may not be connected as much got a totally different type of care response. And so there wasn't continuity of care. There wasn't trust building. There wasn't proactive measures put in place or a way to keep track. Gift cards were being handed out. No one knew, who was getting a gift card. And
Yeah,
anyway,
and the system had to be rebuilt
system.
every
Oh,
time.
every
Like,
time.
every time something happens, you go into panic mode. We gotta react. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
it's true. It's
I could yeah, won't get on my soapbox, but I'm belaboring the point where it was very chaotic and
Yeah.
system structure needed to be put in place.
Okay. And so when did you start making the transition? Oh, I'm not gonna work for an agency, or I'm not gonna, be I'm gonna do this type of work instead of the social work therapy work.
Yeah. So, I couldn't afford to quit working and start
Mhm.
something new. That's that tension of, this burden and desire to do something, and I didn't have a name for it. Didn't I wouldn't have identified myself as entrepreneur at that time. I just knew there felt like a calling, And so I started off my workplace happened to offer a job share by a trial, like a trial job share option. So I took the job share partially because I was recognizing that to prevent compassion fatigue and burnout in the future, bivocational is really ideal in helping professions. It's actually really preventative.
You mean two careers? Not
Yeah.
fully the emotional
Yeah.
pour out
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
100%?
Yes.
Like,
Being
something needs to give back a little bit? Is that
Something
what
needs
you're saying?
something needs to give back, the realities of needing finances, but if you're part-time in one job and part-time in another, it does provide a little bit of well, not a little bit, it does provide a bit of scheduling chaos,
Sure.
but it has reprieve. The caregiver, they're finding, they're either refueled by their other job, whether it's creative or task-oriented or whatever, but it's not about pouring out 40 to 50 hours a week. Mhm.
Hmm.
So took that job share and started just meeting with a business coach saying, "Okay, I have this idea. Who do you know in this field?" So started talking with people. Is this needed? Is it necessary? Started paying attention to, Instagram, who's speaking in this space, what are the events that are happening in the mental health and faith space. And there was a ton of work that needed to happen. My experience at my church was not isolated. Many people, as it turns out, are frustrated with their church's care response. And then uh, from job share, I did part-time and then relief and then casual and slowly over 2 years at least, if not 2.5 years, slowly phased out working full-time, working externally,
Mhm.
and then started focusing on building the business as it became more sustainable.
Okay. Switching a little bit to the business challenges, what
Yeah.
were some of the things you overcame? What were some of the mindsets you had to break through? What
Oh
Because
gosh.
if we're talking to other therapists who are like, "Oh, I have this idea. I have this
Yeah,
mission. I
go
see
for it.
this need." Like,
Yeah.
that it's
Okay.
scary, right?
It's
Like, so
so
what
scary.
had to change?
Oh my gosh. So, it was more confidence than anything needs to change. What I discovered that as a clinician, you are very, very, very well equipped for business. You might not feel like you are a business person or an entrepreneur, but let me tell you, you have navigated with people through change, management, and recovery. My gosh, if you can change a person's behavior, you could do anything. Like that patience, that assessment, that intuition of when to challenge and when to pull back, that's sales, my friend. Like that is sales through and through. Discover what the other person's motivation is. You hear the language that they're using. You know the solution. You can't tell them the solution, but you have to lead them to the solution. It just so happens that in business, your offer, your product, your service is the solution. So that I had to grow in confidence in that. And I didn't realize how translatable the skills as a clinician are into business. I thought they were like black and white, like two totally different fields, but they're not. They're not at all.
And treatment plans are
Oh
very
my gosh.
similar to business plans.
100%. What are the risks? When do you know what are the markers of success? All
Measurable
kinds
goals, yeah.
measurable
Oh, yeah.
goals. Yeah, looking at both, like, the measurable goals as well as more the qualitative descriptors, like, it is you it anyone who wants to go into business probably should just go to school because it's so the same. I would say, though, that what needed to change is my perspective of how I approach, we'll say, customers. Because as a clinician, you are the generalist. You're saying, "Where do you want to go today, client, at 10 o'clock and 11:30 and 1 o'clock?" You adapt to the individual sitting in front of you. But as a business person, it's you have to flip that script on its head, and you have to change everything about that approach. You are the expert in the niche area that you have chosen. This is your ideal person, your ideal audience. This is the solution you can provide, whether it's fitness, whether it's, a course, whatever it is, a workbook, a intensive marriage weekend. I don't care what it is. So you are the expert in that area and you are attracting everyone that might need that. So rather than you being in the generalist, you are actually the expert attracting people who need that solution. And so that was a hard thing to change because I was like, "Oh, I can serve anyone," when making that business plan. Who's your audience that you want to attract on Instagram or your website? And everything depends on that. The language, the colors, the logo, the time of day that you offer your product or service. Everything depends on who you're serving. And when they're like, "Okay, so who's your ideal audience?" And I'm like, "I could help everyone." And that's a fast track to burnout in business. You need to pick your audience and become an expert in a niche area.
Yeah, because they want their problem solved. But
Yeah,
if you solve everybody's problem, you're too broad.
yeah,
It's just they're looking for a specific thing. So
yeah.
if you're like, oh, I'm going to appeal to everyone, nobody gets on your boat.
No,
I've explained this before. Like if you have a boat taking a trip, if you don't set a destination, nobody's going to really get on it unless they just enjoy boat rides. But if you're going to, from New York to
yeah,
Florida or something and you want to travel by boat, you're going to get on the Florida boat. And it's sort of the same way with businesses and problems. They want to get on the right boat and they'll
yeah,
pay more for the right boat. If it takes them
yeah.
to the destination quicker, they're going to invest in that and buy on, and it'll be a better trip because
Mhm.
they know where they're going and you know where you're going. So anyways, yeah, I love the
Totally true. It's
yeah.
totally true. And as the clinicians, we're like, "But we don't wanna leave anyone out. We don't wanna hurt anyone's feelings. There's a lot of hurting people out there." And I do have the skill sets to be able to support everyone. And
Mhm.
there's no doubt that you do, but I always give the example when I'm doing coaching is that, like, when you go to McDonald's, their marketing, their advertising, and their menu is for young adults or young people, those who have rock solid GI systems.
Mhm.
But if you look at who's in the building, who's at McDonald's on Tuesday morning at 10 AM, it's the seniors. So just because you a niche and you get really specific on who you're serving, it doesn't mean other people won't enjoy it. It just means your marketing dollars and your focus is on one audience.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's transition into, you had this mission and you overcame some challenges. So what are you doing now, and who do you help?
Yeah. So right now we focus on, and I'll bridge the two conversations in that give yourself patience as you're building business because it takes time to iterate and
Oh,
find your audience. So the first
mhm.
2.5 years, I was struggling to find my audience. And I first started off with my audience being pastors who are mostly male, who are mostly in their 40s to 50s. I was like a 30 something female with no ministry experience. Of course, that wasn't going to work. So, but what I did bump up against, and you got to keep paying attention, is care people, missions, those in missions, those who are leading small groups, care ministry, benevolence, discipleship. Those individuals are like, hey, okay, I know I can't burn out in ministry, but how do I serve more people? And I was like, oh, these are my people. These are the 40-year-old females that are serving and caring for the congregation. So that is what we adapted and shifted and are 100% focused on supporting ministry leaders in churches who are leading care opportunities and care projects and ministries in their church. And we do that through courses, cohorts, coaching. There's podcast, newsletter, online community, and then we have workshops, intensives, and an annual event called the Church Mental Health
Mm.
Summit.
Do you have a story of a church or somebody you worked with that kind of illustrates what you do?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes churches have great intentions, as we spoke about, on developing care ministries, but there is no job description. There's not a lot of models. And as we know, people are unique and have their own unique stories. So how can we create a cookie cutter program for churches when everyone they interact with is a unique problem? So, oftentimes churches come to us or ministry leaders come to us within the first 2 years of them being hired, and they're like, "We have nothing. We don't know what to do. Our our pastor is just help people." Like, ha I'm and oftentimes people hire the most compassionate, empathetic people in their church when
Mhm,
really, as all clinicians know, 50 or more percent of our job is paperwork, it's administration,
mhm,
all of those things, and they just don't have the skills and the knowledge and the understanding of the systems and structure. A church would come to us and we'd talk about, okay, what is inside the scope or capacity of your church to care? Here's some workflows, pathways, and systems. Here's policy and procedure. Here's how you build a budget. Here's how you develop teams, onboard volunteers. Um,
mm,
and then here's how you support your teams so that they don't become burnt out and experience fatigue. And there's many churches who go through that where started less than 2 years ago, often within the first year, they find us and say, "Okay, um, what's a benevolence policy? Okay, well, here's a template. What does your state say for
mhm.
requirements?" And then customizing it from there with them.
That's fabulous. That sounds like it's like a shortcut.
Oh,
Like
for
you
sure.
wanna get stuff done, but
Yeah.
you don't know how to do it, and you think you need some processes and procedures, but who else is doing this? It's like a great resource to jump in and be like, "Okay, this is how you can get started and
Mhm.
do it well, quicker." You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Lots of
it's
templates, lots of examples, lots of
and then
thing off.
coaching and support too. I think somebody to talk to about how to do this that's done it before
Yeah.
is a great resource. So, why don't you tell us where if people are interested in learning more, because it sounds like you have so much on your
There's a lot.
webpage and your podcast and something like if people are interested in this for their church or like their care ministry, where can they go to find these resources?
Yeah, you can check out hopemadestrong.org, or we're on Instagram, hope_made_strong. I wish I changed that name at the beginning, but, hindsight. Hope Made Strong, just look us up. We're on Instagram, we have .org. We have a podcast that is 3 times a month and a newsletter that's weekly and an online community of those who are ministry leaders who are
Hmm.
serving in their church. So they could connect and provide peer support for one another. So we're excited to have other leaders join us, any other people who are passionate about mental health, faith, and caring for their community.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you came on the show to share. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Okay, listeners, you have a mission. You might lack a little bit of confidence, but it is possible, and you have the skills. The therapist has a lot of skills that can translate into other practices. So it's now time to start doing things imperfectly and put your mission in motion. And we'll see you next time.
As we wrap up today, here's what I want you to remember and hold on to. If you're feeling burned out, like many helpers and therapists are, doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It probably means you're giving and giving and giving and giving more than you were meant to give. There's a better way to keep doing this work, and it doesn't have to drain you of everything that you are. So don't try to fix everything this week. Just take one small step in a better direction, and you can use the resources from Hope Makes Strong. Those will be in the show notes to find some relief, some community, and some support. Before we go, I want to say thank you to the pro member sponsors inside the Scaling Therapy Services directory. We have ARC Integrated, Therasas CRM, Guest Compliance Consulting, Freedom Business Solutions, Boss Co., and Profit Comes First. These are people who can help you with your business bottlenecks to grow, get organized, stay compliant, and move forward. If you have a business bottleneck, go to scalingtherapistservices.com and search for a trusted provider. And when you reach out, tell them you found them through Scaling Therapist Podcast or Scaling Therapist Services directory. All right, that's it for today. Keep going. You're doing great work. If you need support, reach out to the resources in the show, and we'll see you next time.